and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am.
So hello and welcome, beloved Ascension pioneers and all you lovers of life. And beautiful location here today for the Equinox message that I am going to prepare and channel for all of us today. It's nothing special. It's actually a very simple message because those of you who have been doing your inner work, you have been preparing, you have been moving deeper into your mastery, you have been realizing that there are certain things that are leaving your reality because of everything like that. And that's why today I'm guided to record in these beautiful surroundings in the pristine waterfalls, because it's just they're simply leaving us. They're simply moving away from what we no longer wish to embody, because we have been taking a stand for ourselves for so long. Recently, there was this inner shift that you have noticed within yourself into coming more in your divine form, embracing your body, embracing the cultivation of life force. And there is a video I prepared for you about the Kundalini Shakti and the sacred dance of the life force reverence and the raising and cultivating. So that's available, and you can tune into that video separately apart from this video. And I've been receiving messages because I've been in silence and in inner contemplation for the whole week. I've been gathering knowledge of Kriya Yoga and just studying many different things and receiving at the same time from my own source of wisdom what is important for us at this time as a collective, and yet on a very personal, individual level. If you've been reading some of the stories from the masters, you know that there comes a time in an initiate's life when he really starts to prepare for the descent of his mastery, when he realized that what he was developing and researching and through the books and scholarship, and even if that meant certain fame, whatever it was, even if it was very intellectually brilliant, they realized that for them to have an experience of God, the realization of the self, for self-attainment, they had to go deeper within, and they had to have that as a solitary experience. We're now, of course, in a different age. We're in a different time. And there's many of us here who are volunteer souls who have been going through this and perhaps other planes of realities, some of you here. But we are here to show this new way through that being integrated, and yet there's still a calling to that aspect, which in many of these scriptures is called the sadhana. And the sadhana means the practice and the devotion to all that is the seeking and attainment of that truth. So everything that we do for the attainment of that truth, not just seeking truth, but in our reverence, we're constantly devoting all of our life and reality. And there's many who've been saying, well, that takes a special attunement that's perhaps not for everyone. And it does not lie in renouncing ourselves of the earthly life. But these seekers who've been doing that, they have been doing that to research what that could bring. We're all coming to the angle of creation in different spectrum. So I've been sharing with you throughout many different months and years, different sharings that I've created for all of us here, that it's time for us to also not just embrace the inner attainment, the inner mastery, but to merge it with the aspect of all life in creation, and to have love for all life forms that is so deep. And that's what I call this divine love, the descent of that divinity. And that's how life force is. It's raw in its potential, and it moves towards ever and greater expansion. And yet there's something that we cannot learn about it through scriptures or words alone. And we cannot simply say, well, that will be my practice, it will be like this, every week like this and that. Because now this time we're stepping into is asking us to be a little wilder in it, to be a little more spontaneous in it, that the devotion to that sadhana, which is the dedication of our life reality to the higher attainment. So a lot of people will say, and they will judge, and they will not understand this path. I've been judged before for not having a family or not living a standard life that most humans know. And yet this is my path, and this is what I've chosen. Because I've came here to walk in divine service. And this takes sacrifice and commitment and constant devotion, which is what I call my own sadhana. And yet how I approach this, and just today I had this beautiful yoga activation, doing some of the Kriya Yoga and my own yogic attainment that I received from my spirit directly. It was this beautiful movement and flow and the connection and synchronicity of all movements together. And it felt like this is when everything that culminates, all that we receive, and then it's synthesized, and we just let it flow. And this is that final surrender. When we yet know, and yet we don't know, we say every time I want to be emptied out. So I recorded this Shakti Kundalini Awakening Life Force with my sacred dancing to kind of like give an example of how this dedication can be achieved through many levels. And for me, a lot of that comes through yoga and dancing. And of course, I do singing, devotional singing too. So if you've been studying the Kriya, it has 5 different yogic attainments. So they all rever different aspects of our being, all 5 spiritual and 4 lower bodies. And when we devote to all of these in harmony and balance, and today we have beautiful equilibrium on the planet as well, because I'm recording this on the day of the equinox, which is the only day when it's an even and equal disproportion of life and distribution of that life throughout the southern and northern hemisphere and throughout the whole planet. And this is the strongest point of activation, when we can really feel into what is the greatest harmonic resonance with this balance that we can have and achieve for ourselves. So I've been shown through my own higher self and the masters that having that sadhana and the focus on the sadhana, that's just the word, and yet it's powerful because all these words from ancient Sanskrit writings and different scriptures, they carry divine light, just as different chants and mantras and devotional singing as well. So it's becoming very important for us to cultivate that all the time, so that we don't just do yoga perhaps an hour or 3 times a week and then we forget about it, so that we integrate it in our daily reality, that how we feed, how we communicate, how we look at the lives of other people is in balance. And yet that we rever that aspect of ourselves, which is, it's a hermit, it's a constant inner master, when you're constantly disengaging from the world to find your own engagement with life, so that you don't just have a life, pursue a life, but you become the essence of life itself. And that's coming really strongly now. And the great masters have always been sharing that, and they've each showed us a pathway through the different attainment, through a different ray of crystallization of spirit into matter, how and what they were developing within that focus of the ray that they came here to serve. So me, serving the wide ray of unity consciousness, my main message is always to take all those aspects, and we're always asking ourselves, do we live in balance here? Do we have our attainment in balance? Not just, okay, I did my yoga, check, I did that, check, from an egoic standpoint, like I did that as an achievement, but to become the essence of that. So you're not just dancing, you're becoming the essence of dance. You're not just doing a yoga, you are yoga itself. And yoga means that connection with all life, with source, is that interconnectedness of everything. And different practices are that which disciplines us to move through the lower aspects that kind of block us sometimes, and we filter through many different experiences that are not from our own sovereign self. It's also important to ask ourselves about the body, to learn to tune into our body, meaning that when are we having resistance towards something, perhaps a certain practice, and we're in fatigue and we're in that inertia and we don't want to do things, or when our body simply does not allow us to do something because it's for greater good in this moment. Our body does not want to participate in something because it's guided and it comes through spirit, and we have to learn to read that language. And it was given to us for so many of these practices, like the ancient yogas and the teachings, how we can go directly into the embodiment process without using too much of the controlling of the mind, or trying to control the mind, so that the higher consciousness and its abilities, which we sometimes call magical abilities, will just naturally develop as a result of that. Okay, so I was shown the importance of the sadhana, you know, and when I do my practice, each time it's different, it's unique. Sometimes I will do chants before, sometimes it will be something else, sometimes I'll just sit in quiet. I do breathing first, always. I cultivate the breath to lift the life force. And then sometimes I do these exercises, sometimes I do more of the other exercises. It's just learning to tune into that balance, right? Just that integrated self. Okay, so I propose for all of us to do a channeled harmonious attunement for the sadhana, and becoming The 3 L's. I call this the 3 L's. All these beautiful divine words begin with the letter L, which is light, love, and life. Light and love create life, and we are the essence of life. So when we either channel these sacred words we devote to, I just recently created a set of magical stones. These are my gray stones. These have 13 sacred primary essences within them, and they're just simple words of attainment. Okay, that's the essence of an integrating. And then we're all of these essences. It's not a fragmented experience. It no longer has to be. They're all interconnected. They don't exist without each other. And when we look at the life of creation, it's so deep and vast that I've noticed the more I tune into this depth, the less these things that are of trivial nature are of interest to me, to us. They're just dissolving. And people are moving away, and they're moving towards their own current of life, where it's taking them. And perhaps for you, something served your purpose at a particular level. Now it's just withdrawing and it's moving away, and that's perfect. For us to become an essence of life itself means that we have to have that total surrender. So that's why I created that dance for all of you. I'm not really the one to perform in front of the camera that way. I'm used to speaking, but so it's my gift to all of you, to all of us. Because the Kundalini Shakti wants to emerge more and more, and yet the Kundalini Shakti needs the aspect that is our focus and attainment, so that the divine feminine, divine masculine within us will merge. And yet that which we call the Kundalini Shakti is the primordial life force, which is beyond any polarization that goes into the masculine and the feminine. It's completely benevolent and androgynous. So that's that essence I call the triangulation. Kundalini is even many times represented with the triangle. And then there's the serpent moving through it. So you can visualize those symbols. Usually when I do these chants, my hands are in these motions. And I propose that we do that attunement together. Oh, and I wanted to say this, that just recently I've noticed a shift in some of the beings that are very well known and established in the world. I've been watching a video from Doreen Virtue, and she's been doing lots of angel healing and, sharing. And recently she's been doing a lot of the scripture work. I started working with the essence of Jesus. And she said that a lot of people in the New Age movement, and that's something that's my strong message as well in this world. And I need to move through that myself so I could see how distorted and an illusion it is. Because for our ascension, it doesn't just happen. We need to start cultivating that which makes it possible. And she said that there's many beautiful people she met throughout the years of her work, and yet many of them within the New Age movement are only focusing on the positivism, and they're not really moving into that. Or I also notice people who say it's all about the divine feminine, and yet she's not complete without the divine masculine. What I teach is unity. And in unity consciousness, there is an integrated polarity, an integrated union of the masculine and feminine self, so that divine Shakti can truly start rising in her primordial nature, which you might say it's feminine, and yet it's beyond, right? It's not the feminine as we know it. So the only way I can think of it is the primordial life force, the primordial life force. So it's becoming more and more important to have that dedication, have that steady focus in your practice, develop. And for me, it's becoming daily now. It's moving, it's growing, it's expanding, and I've noticed that it expands me much more than just contemplation. Contemplation is very necessary. When we say the essence of critical thinking and why it's so important is because we need the critical thinking to see where we are sabotaging, where we're learning, through the old dogmas, where we're misleading ourselves, how are we in illusion. That's where the critical thinking, that's not the same as being critical towards ourselves or others. It's just that reasonable, discerning, critical thinking that we need to be beyond the illusions, which it's like the more barriers that we crack and we move through, the more expanded it will get, within your consciousness. And yet on the physical plane, it might feel more alone, sometimes even lonely, because there won't be a lot of people who would understand that level. So the deeper you will go, the wider you become as a being, you won't need that much approval anymore. You won't need that much, people need to be as I am. They need to think, they need to choose mastery, they need to choose these things, they need to walk this path of attainment. You need to do that. You need to choose that continuously if that is your choice. And if you have chosen this for yourself, if your soul is guiding you towards greater physical ascension and mastery. But the others are simply, they are where they are. And when you expand your consciousness, you embrace them all. No one is forgotten, and left behind. They're all within your field because your field of conscious awareness has expanded so much. So I recommend for us to do a simple attunement. And so be it, and so it is. Thank you. achieve true spiritual liberation and transformation that is solid, that is not just temporary, that is not just seen as a quick solution or method or practice, but the essence of life itself, that truly is embodied in all of its ways and forms. We have to go deep. Because if we're only doing things by scraping the surface, we're only going to be tapping into the temporarily samadhis, which will never become a permanent ascended experience. What we need to do is drop firstly all the beliefs that that is even possible. Secondly, move through the illusions that there is external backstabbing, that there is external working against us to achieve that. But in truth, that's not really so. It's always there. It always has been. And thirdly, we need to devote ourselves to the path, to devotion, to sadhana, to experience that enlightenment which starts to expand from there onwards, reach even greater levels of existence that we have known so far and beyond, which are possible, which do exist already. They're a potential and yet they're also a reality. And with those of us making those brave conscious steps towards that, we're creating solid change, not just temporary infatuation or a distraction or a curiosity to feed the ego and more of the mind, playing the games with ourselves and others, but to completely devote to this path, even as when many great masters shared, when they had their pre-samadhi experience, they were there alone, many times isolated, meditating, asking for that assistance, asking for that divine intervention, initiation. And when they were right at the verge of giving up, and really at the, at the very root of that, which we can say, well, one at this point does not know what to do, so you can only surrender. That is the true space for creating that and making it possible. And it does take constant devotion, constant surrendering, constant trust, and the ability to be and show up at the right place at the right time. With our vision always placed within and eyes above, trusting that source and trusting the life force that is so ancient that it knows exactly where it is going, what it is doing. We simply have to embrace it and allow it to work through us as us in complete devotion and purity. Thank you. Don't be afraid to step through the threshold into the greater depths that await. The rewards are numerous and infinite. Enjoy. Have a beautiful equinox wherever you are. So much love within the light and the spirit of our life and creation.
Magical.